It's Shiki. It's Shiki. I'm putting all my chips on it. I'm walking into the casino. I'm going up to the roulette wheel, and I'm just like, put it all on Shiki the Golden Lion, please, sir. That's not a space on the roulette. Put it all on Shiki the Golden Lion, sir. All right. Oh, holy crap, it's Shiki the Golden Lion. How did that even happen, right? I bet Barry's life that this is Shiki the Golden Lion. Yeah. Okay. So, hi everybody, Teching101 here, Barry also here again. So the person, the mysterious individual, right, that we see on Elbaph, we see him in the last chapter, we also saw him a few chapters ago on the seashore getting drunk. Well, I guess, okay, we don't know if he was drinking alcohol, maybe he was drinking grape juice, we don't know, but he was sitting there on Elbaph and he was like in silhouette, the standard Oda silhouette, just like, glug, glug, glug. Come then, Straw Hat Pirates, and have a conversation with me. I'm very lonely. Glug, 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 right? And then in the last chapter, as the Straw Hats reach the sun layer of the tree, we find out that the Yggdrasil, the treasure tree atom, is divided into three sections: the underworld, the sun level, and then the heaven level, okay? And so the Straw Hats go up the Rainbow Bridge. Everybody gets back together. Everybody reconvenes in the last chapter, and we get to see Dorian Broggy's village, and it's very beautiful. Put a pin in that. We're going to get back to the village in a moment, but then at the very end of the chapter, before we get Louis Arnault's very ominous, like, oh, do not linger too long in Elbaph, Louis Arnault, we also see a shot of the forest, which is also, we assume, in the sun layer. And we see a large Elbaph, like, grizzly, you know, like a bear, like, standing up on its hind legs and, like, looking around. And then way in the corner, I actually missed it the first time I read the chapter, but way in the corner, there's a silhouette of an individual walking by, wearing a casa hat and having long, spiky hair, and just kind of shifting through the tree line there. Okay, so in this video, I have 5 reasons that I have compiled on why this is Shiki, all right? But before we get into the other 4, which are more boring, I'll be honest with you, I'm just going to get to my number 1 best piece of evidence for Shiki right now out of the gate. Are you guys ready for this? Okay, here we go. Reason numero uno on why this is Shiki the Golden Lion. Come on! It's clearly Shiki. Come on, everybody, right? Come on. Vibes, right? Come on, feel the Shiki vibes. They're there. It's Shiki. Come on. That's the best I got, but you know what? Maybe it's a come on, right? Like, this is clearly the same individual, and many people have pointed this out. It's clearly the same individual that was having a drink with Crocus back at the Twin Capes in the cover page spread, okay? That cover page that came out like Decks of the World, I mean, that was like well over 10 years ago at this point, and a lot of people, even back then, were like, this is Shiki. Because remember, this was like shortly after Strong World came out, right? You know, I have Chapter 0 right here, Strong World. Great movie. Go check it out. Luffy has a lightning foot that kicks Shiki really hard. That was fun. Usopp shoot a giant dragon into the sky. That was a crazy movie. But anyway, even back then, people were like, this is Shiki. I mean, he's got the same hair as Shiki. He's got the same kimono as Shiki. He's wearing a casa hat, which, weirdly enough, canonically, Shiki has never been shown wearing a casa hat, but, like, it fits him, right? I mean, he has a very Wano aesthetic already. You put a casa hat on Shiki, I think it looks fine, right? I mean, yeah. So, yeah, it's clearly that same individual. Now, there is also the digitally colored manga, which is here, that even makes it more obvious that it's Shiki, because he's wearing Shiki's, like, kimono. Like, the color is exactly the same. Now, I don't really know. I mean, some people have said, like, Oda selects every single color in the digitally colored manga, and other people have said, like, no, he really doesn't oversee that kind of stuff. Personally, I would feel like that would be a huge workload for Oda to go through, like, every single chapter of a digitally colored manga and being like, no, this character has to have this design, this character has to have this design. So I'm not really sure where Oda's influence is on this, or maybe this was just this specifically. Maybe they went to Oda and was like, hey, what's the color of this guy's outfit, because we have no idea who this individual is that's having a drink with Crocus, and be like, oh yeah, that's Shiki, here you go, this is his outfit, right? I mean, make sure to have this in the digitally colored manga, right? At the very least, he has a kimono that has the same design as Shiki, and also has a long mane of light colored hair, which is probably blonde, and then there you go. I mean, yeah, that's how it is, right? It's clearly Shiki, right? In Elbaph right now, many people have noted that the creatures that are stomping around in the underworld, where Loki is and everything, are creatures that were shown in the movie Strong World, that were like the mutated animals that were part of Shiki's crew on his flying island of clouds and rainbows called Merveille. Yeah, we're going to get back to that in a moment. But yeah, giant army of animals, right? Like the moose that Stanson and Hyrudin killed, that was in the movie. The giant animals that emerged out of the forest when Luffy was discussing stuff with Loki, they are all in the movie. The mammoth was in the movie. The bear was in the movie. We see one of the screen buffaloes early on. That was in the movie. The only one that wasn't in the movie, I think, is the wolf. That like the wolf that was kind of like taking point on all the animals when they walked out of the tree line. There's this giant Elbaph wolf and had like flames coming out of it and stuff. I don't think that was in the movie, but like every other animal is closely tied. It's the same animal designs as the animals from Strong World, right? So that would mean that Oda had to sit down and was like, you know what? For these giant animals that are stomping all over the land of the giants in Warland Elbaph, I'm going to make a personal decision to make those the same animals with the same designs and concept art from the movie Strong World. So Oda's going to go through that trouble of like, Strong World, that was a good movie, that was a good project, I'll make these animals here. And he's not going to incorporate Shiki into that. Come on! Like, they're giant animals from Strong World. It's like Shiki, Strong World. Like, there you go, right? Okay. We do not see this character's legs at all, like, ever. Like, when he's having a drink with Crocus, you could kind of make out, I had to, like, enhance, and you could kind of make out a knee, all right? But in Shiki's case, he cut off the bottom parts of his legs and attached his swords, and so he still has parts of his legs. It's just that the lower half, like below the knee, or I think it was around the knee, is when it was cut off, right? So even though we see this like little knee there, it's just like, no, this could still be Shiki. We don't see it in the silhouette when he's on the shore of Elbaph. It's like really tiny, and the silhouette kind of takes it all up, and he's probably like sitting like cross-legged, so we can't really see it there. And in the last chapter, when he's walking through the forest, we only see above his waist. We don't see down below. So I think that would be too much of a giveaway that it's Shiki, even though it's pretty all right. To me, it seems like an obvious giveaway it's Shiki. But then again, don't take my word for anything. I was right about the road thing, but I was also wrong about Van Augur being the one to teleport Luffy over to the vending machine. I will say, though, I'm more confident in this being Shiki than that of being a Van Augur, okay? And it turned out it was Kizaru in the SBS. So yeah, we don't see the character's legs, and I feel like that is an intentional thing on Oda's end. Same thing with the Casa hat. That kind of ties into this point. So Shiki in the movie, well, at least not in the movie, but in the flashback at the Ed War, Shiki had a steering wheel of a ship lodged in his head, as you do. It just kind of happens, right? And so the steering wheel was lodged like this way, like vertically on his head. And so you could say that, like, oh, maybe he's wearing the Casa hat to hide that. Now you could say, like, does that really make a lot of sense, putting a Casa hat over a head, with the wheel? Like, wouldn't the wheel get stuck, or wouldn't it look a little different? I don't know. I mean, like, Oda could make it, maybe the wheel's not as prominent as in the movie. There was actually, I saw some interesting concept art of Shiki, and it was originally maybe the wheel was going this way on the head instead of like this way, because it was like a rooster's, what's that thing called? The rooster's crest, I think it is. The rooster crest on his head and stuff like that. Yeah, it was originally a different way in Oda's notes, so maybe he decided to do that instead. Or maybe Shiki just doesn't have the wheel in his head. I mean, it is a cool design. It kind of is like Shiki's defining characteristic. But ultimately, the movie is relatively non-canon. We'll get back to that. Some parts of it are, and some parts of it aren't, in terms like Shiki himself is canon, and the Fuwa Fuwa Nomi, which is a point we'll have to address as well. But at any rate, like, Oda could easily say that, like, oh yeah, this version of Shiki in the manga does not have a steering wheel lodged in his head. And that's all it is there too, right? Okay. So that's like more about physical appearance and stuff like that. Then we also have Merveille. All right, so Merveille in the movie is Shiki's floating cloud paradise islands that he uses. He uses the Fuwa Fuwa Nomi to raise up these islands, and we have islands that have, like little water bubbles around them, and there's rainbows. I mean, look at this place. I'm gonna say it again. Come on! This is clearly like Elbaph, right? Like, there's references here. Like, you can see this, and look at the village in the last chapter, and you tell me that there's no similarities here between the land of Elbaph and Merveille from the movie, okay? It really makes me think that Oda had some ideas for Elbaph. I mean, he would have had these ideas for a long time. You know, it wouldn't have just been now. Way back during when Strong World was being, in development. And remember, Strong World was the first One Piece movie that Oda was, like, really involved with. Okay, and it was the 10th movie, all right? Movies 1 through 7... I mean, they consulted Oda on certain things. He drew some promotional artwork for them. Like, I remember he drew, like, a cover spread of Saga from the 5th movie. You know, he would do some, like, promotional stuff, like marketing stuff for that. But he wasn't, like, super involved with the movie. Movie 8 was just a retelling of Alabasta. Movie 9 was a reinterpretation of Drum Island that involved Frankie there and, Wapple's brother and everything. But then we get to movie 10. Then we get to Strong World, and every movie beyond, Film Z, Film Gold, Film Stampede, and then Film Red, okay? And Oda has had way more of a hand in the development of these movies, the designs of these characters, the overall plots. Oda has a little bit more of an influence in that one, okay? And so Strong World was the first one of these, and I bet you, I mean, this is just teching headcanon here, but I have a feeling that it was kind of like, you know what? I have all these designs for, like, Elbaph and things like that, but it's going to be a while until the Straw Hats actually get to Elbaph. I mean, this was back in, like, 2009-ish, 2010-ish. It's going to be a long while till they reach Elbaph. So you know what? I'm just going to incorporate some of this stuff here now into Strong World, and then we might loop back around to this later. So it's either one or the other. It's either when Oda was drawing Elbaph, he was like, you know what, I need some large creatures in Elbaph. Oh, wait a minute, what about Strong World? There was like 30 different animal designs for that movie. I'll just use them here. Or it was decided way back in like 2010. I kind of feel like Oda would have thought that at least. He's like drawing these monsters and stuff, and he's just like, wait a minute, you know what? Actually, I don't know if Oda came up with the designs of every single animal. I'm not really sure on that one. I know there's concept art on all of them. I just don't know if Oda, sat down and drew every single one, because there's a lot of crazy animals in Strong World. But either way, he might have been like, you know what? Maybe we could circle back around and use these later in the story. Something like that, right? But at any rate, the village on Elbaph that Dory and Bragi are from, it's partly, into the tree, but it's also supported by some island cloud, and, it's like this big castle, and it's right out of a fairy tale, and you could look at Merveille kind of the same way. So, yeah, like, I also kind of see it as just like, there's a rainbow there, for God's sakes, and they just went up on a rainbow bridge in the last chapter. So I'm like, all right, there's really heavy Strong World vibes in Elbaph so far. And if there is heavy Strong World vibes, you gotta have the strongest Strong World vibe, and that is Shiki, okay? So let's talk about SBS. This is another point. I don't even know which point we're on at this point. But anyway, we have SBS from volume 109, okay? So there was a question involving Shiki here. Finally, a character who looks like Shiki the Golden Lion has appeared in the main story. Does this mean that the movie Strong World has officially been incorporated into the main story timeline? Now, I'm assuming the person that asked this question, Utaro, was referring to Shiki as he appears in the God Valley flashback, okay? There was also, when Higurashi transformed into a younger Shiki during Wano, that was also an indication there. It was very clearly Shiki there in his younger days. But now we have, God Valley flashback during Egghead, which is another thing. It's like we got to start expanding on the Rocks crew a little bit here, right? And we have already. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, they were all members of Rox's crew and all that. And this is, of course, going to tie back into Blackbeard in a big way, Zebek, Saber of Zebek. There's definitely a connection here, and I'm sure Blackbeard's ambitions line up with Rox's in a certain way, King of the World and all that. But we see Shiki there, and we don't see the steering wheel in his head, although that would have, in the timeline, that would have taken place long before the Ed War incident where he got the steering wheel in his head. But we see him there, and we see him charging in with Rox's crew at God Valley. So that is most likely who, that's like, oh, there's a character that wasn't directly referred to as Shiki, but is Shiki. And Oda responds with this. Well, it is possible to incorporate most movies into the story. I guess. I mean, there's no way you're incorporating the ninth movie into the story because that's like a parallel universe, basically. I guess you could incorporate like the fifth or sixth movie into the series, I suppose. But yeah, Oda does say it's a little bit forced. But then it would make watching the movie obligatory, and I don't want to connect it to the original work in that way. So I get Oda's premise here. He doesn't want to like, hey, you got to watch this movie to make complete sense out of this character. However, this is where Oda goes on. This is an exception with Strong World. In the case of Strong World, I came up with the story, and I used Shiki, who originally existed in the setting of the main story. However, if it wasn't for the movie Strong World, Shiki would not have eaten the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. I had a rule in my mind to not include characters who could fly or float freely in the sky, so I sealed the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi away because it's a pirate manga. But because it's for a movie, I used it. That character has returned to the original story. It's true that a strange re-important has occurred. Okay, so, I mean, the way I'm interpreting that, and you could interpret that, I think, a couple of different ways, is that Oda had the idea of Shiki before Strong World was even, like that the premise of that even happened. Oda had Shiki bobbing around in his head like, yeah, there was a really strong pirate back in the day of Roger, used to be on this crew, rocks, it's Shiki, Golden Lion. We have to start adding some really strong characters from legend, like, into the story. So he already had Shiki, ready to go. And then Strong World, the movie, is like, hey, Oda, we want you to make a movie or help us make a movie. And Oda was like, you know what? I'm going to use Shiki. Maybe for the same reason earlier. Like, I don't know when I'm going to get around to using Shiki in the main story. I can introduce him here in this movie. Movies don't necessarily have to be completely devoid of any reference to canon. The overall adventure of the Straw Hat is mainly going to be non-canon, but when it comes to like characters introduced, yeah, you could like, hey, let's give the audience a little sneak preview of what's coming up next, like Bullet's backstory being Kaido's backstory, that kind of stuff, right? Okay, Uta showing up in Film Red. Uta, Shanks was reminiscing about her. She's canon, okay? So he's like, I'll incorporate Shiki into the movie. Now, for whatever reason, and Oda doesn't go into it here, something occurred where Shiki had to have the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi in the movie. And Oda was like, I'm not really a fan of that because I don't want to have any devil fruit that makes you just magically be able to fly, because it's a pirate manga and it's about sailing around the seas and all that kind of jazz, right? So I can see two different directions here, like a branching path. On one side, you could look at it like, I didn't want to incorporate the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi into Shiki's character, but I already used it for the movie, so if Shiki ever does show up again in the manga, which he totally is, then, I mean, he clearly did in God Valley, I'm just going to give him the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi, because everybody's going to associate Shiki with the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. Everybody that saw Strong World knows he has the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. In Strong World, the manga, Oda drew him with the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. So Oda's like, you know what? He has that. That's Shiki's fruit. That's the thing everybody incorporates to him. I'm just going to have that there. Okay? That's one way to look at it. The other way of looking at it, when Oda says, so I sealed the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi away, it could be a reference to, hey, if Shiki ever shows up in the story again, which he totally did, he's not going to have the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. All right, I'm going to take that ability. Maybe he'll give him a different Devil Fruit ability. Maybe he won't have a Devil Fruit ability, but he might still have the swords on his legs because that's just cool. But, like, I'm not giving him that because I don't want anybody to just have this free ability to fly around. And remember, it was a big deal when, Pell went into his Falcon form, and he's specifically mentioned there are only 5 Devil Fruits out there that allow flight. Now, I did a video years ago on all the different flying abilities that exist in One Piece, devil fruits that allow you to fly, and I gotta say that I think there's more than 5 even if you remove the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi. I mean, technically speaking, most Logias can fly, because they're, like, intangible. Caesar can definitely fly. He can turn into a hot air balloon, so he can fly. Pell can fly because he's a bird. We have Buffalo's Devil Fruit that allows him to spin, so that's 3 right there. We have Kaido's Devil Fruit. Now, like, does that count as flying? He's not really using wings. wings, he's creating clouds to fly, but that counts. He can just create clouds to fly. Doflamingo can technically fly by throwing his threads through clouds. So it depends on what Oda meant by flight, you know? Pell's fruit was in that category because he specifically says that. So we can assume any zone bird fruit counts with the 5 that allow you to fly. Maybe that was what Pell was referring to. There's only 5 zone fruits that allow you to fly, in which case I think we've already passed up that that limit already. But at any rate, I could see why Oda at least didn't want to just have the float fruit exist, okay? So whether or not that be the case. But, you know, I just want to say that the fact that this question was even addressed, because you got to imagine how many letters Oda gets for the SBS all the time. He's sitting on a mountain of letters, all right? There's going to be a lot that are going to go unanswered. And I'm assuming Oda himself, I mean, I'm assuming maybe his staff go through the letters and pick out the ones that they know that, like, because I'm sure a lot of people ask Oda, like, hey, Oda, what's the One Piece? You know, hey, Oda, who's this character? Hey, Oda, what's this mysterious character? What's Eam really look like? I'm sure Oda has assistants that might sift through those ones that, like, okay, he's clearly not going to answer that. No, he's not going to answer who Eam is. No, he's not going to reveal, you know, Dragon's Devil Fruit in an SBS. Like, that's not going to happen, no. But eventually we get to this question, and Oda, out of the mountain of questions that he could answer, chooses to answer a question about Shiki. And remember, at this point, this is volume 109. Strong World is like well over a decade before this, right? So Strong World is no longer in like the One Piece zeitgeist anymore. It's like 4 or 5 movies back at this point, right? So I don't know. Shiki's shown up at God Valley. Oda answering a question about the SBS involving Shiki. He didn't have to do that, by the way. Oda using a bunch of animal designs from Strong World. The design of Merveille in the movie Strong World. He's not showing Shiki's legs. I think I just realized I have more than 5 reasons here, but whatever. And then finally, most importantly of all, vibes. Come on. You want it to be Shiki, don't you? Everybody wants it to be Shiki. Man, I've seen some other, you know, I did this in a stream yesterday, and people were throwing out Scopper Gabon. I get Scopper Gabon because, like, Crocus was having a drink with him, so he's just like, oh, hey, they're friends. But then again, in Strong World here, Whitebeard was having a drink with Shiki, you know, and, you know, they used to be on the same crew together, and I guess, you know, it's more of, like, an idea of, like, hey, we're the old guard, you know? It's like, oh, hey, Crocus, how you doing, you old son of a bitch? Shiki, oh, my God, I haven't seen you in years. Let's have a drink. You know, they're retired at this point. You know, Crocus is no longer a pirate. Maybe Shiki is no longer a pirate. Maybe Shiki is just like, yeah, I put that life behind me or something like that. And now it's like the same thing with Rayleigh. Rayleigh's retired. You know, they're getting on in years. We don't know how old Shiki was. It's never been revealed, but he would be around the same age. He'd be in his 70s. He'd be around the same age as like Whitebeard or, you know, Rayleigh. And, you know, if, you know, Roger was alive, he'd be in his 70s. He'd be around there. So I view that as just, even if it wasn't a member of, you know, Crocus's crew, you know, it's like, oh, Scopper Gabon, you old son of a gun, come here, let's have a drink. If it's Shiki, even though they were enemies at one point, they did fight and end war, they're like old war buddies, you know? They're like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. I haven't seen you since you got that steering wheel lodged in your head. Come over here, have some sake. Also, Crocus, I mean, I'm sure Crocus is just happy for the company. There's not a lot of stuff to do. He hangs out with a whale all day. That's pretty much the only company he's got. But anyway, that's the video. I'm putting all my money on Shiki. That's fine if you don't want to. You can throw it on. I think it might be Scopper Gabon. Some people have even thrown out this might be Louis Arnault. This might be Louis Arnault that just decided, like, yeah, maybe he's immortal, or maybe something happened on Elbaph that he could never leave, or he never aged, or he's still alive, you know, because we don't know when. Actually, we have no idea. Like, Louis might just be like 100 years old. He might not be immortal or anything. He just might be a really, really old dude, I guess. Maybe. But, yeah, I'm going Shiki on this one, guys. I feel it in my heart and my soul that it's Shiki the Golden Lion, right? So that's how it goes. All right, well, anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. But now we're not done yet because we have the letter D of tree facts. Yes! And I found the perfect tree for this. A lot of people wanted the Douglas fir, but no, I got the perfect tree. Are you ready to talk about the Devil's Tree? Whoa! Finally, we found the tree that has devil fruits on it. Finally, it wasn't even that hard. All you had to do was Wikipedia, and it's right here. Okay, so this is the devil's tree. Scientific name, Alstonia scholaris. But we don't do Latin here. We do, you know, English letter D, so devil's tree. Also called the blackboard tree, scholar tree, the milkweed tree. It grows mainly in South China and into like the Indian subcontinent, out into Indonesia and into Australia. So that general region of the world there. It has very glossy, dark green leaves. They arrange themselves in a very interesting pattern. So that's pretty cool there. Now, it is a toxic tree in the sense that an extract from this tree in high enough concentrations can kill like mice and rats and make them very sick and die. However, it also has a slew of medical applications here. The bark of the tree can be used to treat malaria. That's really cool. It also can help with dysentery and diarrhea. You can use the latex from the tree. The natural latex is more of like an antibacterial kind of like not an ointment, but like a topical treatment for like bacteria and stuff like that. It's like an antimicrobial and things. Now, the flowers are extremely fragrant, though. It has a very distinct scent, and this can be very, it can agitate people's allergies quite a bit because of that very strong scent coming off of the devil's tree. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything about when the devil fruits grow on the devil's tree, but I'm assuming maybe, you know, every once in a while, maybe not every year, but every once in a while a devil fruit grows on there, so I got to travel to India or Australia and see if I can find a devil's tree and get the devil fruit, right? So that's just how it goes. But we finally found out where the trees are. There we go. It took a while, but we located it. All right. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Teching 101 signing out. Just remember, it's Shiki. Come on, it's Shiki.